Hey, I'm John Little. I'm the Vice President and Head Distiller at Smooth Ambler Spirits. We're a grain-to-glass distillery. It does everything here, from milling our own grain to signing the bottles and sending them your way. And this is a tour of our distillery, and this is how we make our spirits.
So the very first thing that takes place is the grain that goes in. And just like good cooking, everything starts with good ingredients. The corn that we have, you can see it's just beautiful corn. Now all this corn is grown by a local family about 30 minutes from here, and right now we're taking about everything these guys grow. And hopefully in the near future they're going to be growing wheat for us, and they're also going to be growing rye for us. Right now the wheat we're using is actually coming from out of state, but it's a fantastic product. It's much better than anything available to us right now in the area.
So we're using our hammer mill to turn our grain into grist, and that's blown with air from the hammer mill up into the mash tank. And the mash tank is really where we cook our grains and convert the starch in those grains into sugar. And this is really the first step prior to fermentation. So we've converted our starch into sugar in the mash tank. We'll pump that slurry from the mash tank over to the fermenter. In the fermenter, our yeast, we use about 6 different yeasts, a different yeast to produce a different flavor in each product. That yeast will consume the sugar in the fermenter and turn that into 2 things, carbon dioxide and alcohol. We'll take this alcohol and refine those flavors that our yeast has created in the distillation process. At this point, we've fermented and we've created basically a distiller's beer. It's about an 8 to 10% alcohol. We'll take that distiller's beer, put it into our stripping still, and do a basic distillation on this. And this is really where we're separating the alcohol from the mash.
Now this is just the first distillation of a couple that every drop of bourbon gets, as well as our vodka, our gin, and our white whiskey. Now the product that comes from this still comes into this tank on a daily basis, and this is called the low wines. Now the low wines is something that you probably wouldn't want to drink. It's very cloudy, it contains a lot of corn oil and byproducts from the mash, which is good because the oil is sort of like the fat on a piece of meat. Without the oil here, you won't have any flavor on the final distillation.
After our first distillation, our stripping run, what's left in the pot is called stillage. It's just a protein-rich base, very thick like oatmeal. We pump that into a couple of holding tanks, and a farmer comes and gets that twice a week, and it's cattle feed. So for us, it's nice to know that our waste is a food source for the animals. This is our spirit still, so we'll take the low wines or the rough cut that we've created in our first distillation, load this still, and run it a second time for whiskey, a third time for vodka, or 4 times for gin.
So today we're cooking bourbon here. This is the final distillation of our typical yearling bourbon or our wheated bourbon. And for this, basically all we're using is this pot, this column, and the condenser. And it's coming straight into the tank that you see here. Now this still is really fantastic because this is a hybrid pot still. The method that I just described is called alembic. Now the other variations that we have is we can use this exact same still, except for instead of going straight to the condenser for a bourbon type product, we can go to either one of these columns to clean and elevate the proof of any other products that we make.
This is really where we refine those flavors, remove the impurities from the alcohol, and collect the heart, the part that we're going to keep and bottle, or the part that we're going to put into a barrel and age.
One of the biggest misconceptions is that bourbon can only be made in Kentucky. And that's something that I'm sure a lot of people from Kentucky like to think, but it can be made anywhere in the United States. The really main influencing factors are good water, a good supply of grain, and a nice temperature difference between seasons to age your product in. And that's one of the reasons that West Virginia, the Greenbrier Valley in particular, is fantastic for aging of whiskey. So right here is where the real magic takes place. Now these barrels are constantly working. Even though the barrel is not moving a bit, this alcohol is constantly moving. It's constantly moving in and out of the wood. As it passes in and out, it leaves impurities in the wood and brings flavor, color, and wood sugars with it.
So everything you've seen up to this point has really been done by one of about 3 people. pretty labor intensive, but it only requires a few people to really do it. The bottling process is really quite different. It just requires a lot of people. So we get friends and family, lots of people from the community. They come in here, they help with the entire process of the bottling. We give them a t-shirt, we feed them lunch. Everybody loves to see their name on a bottle, so it's a pretty good time here. What's unique about Smooth Ambler against the majority of what people drink is really the hands-on approach to what we're doing. Whether we're milling our own grain, or signing our own bottle, or pouring you the sample in here. When you're talking to us, you're talking to someone who's actually made the product, whose life is invested in creating a spirit that's magnificent, not just good. That really has been our goal, to do that with some pride and spirit. We want you to enjoy the products and understand how great they are as much as we enjoyed making those.